So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Today we're going to be talking about a case from Scotland. I have never done a case from Scotland on my channel before, I don't think. So yeah, like I said, I'm trying to do cases from different countries. A lot of my cases that I cover on this channel are from England, and I'm very aware of that, and I'm trying to change that. So thank you all for your suggestions in the comments of my last video. I do appreciate those so much. So quickly, before I get into this case, I just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This is all just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. So Paige Doherty was a 15-year-old girl born on April 17th, 2000, living in Clydebank in Scotland. Paige lived with her mother, Pamela Munro, and her stepfather, Andy Munro, and her younger sister and two younger brothers, and they were a happy little family. They had their arguments here and there, just like any other family would, but Paige absolutely adored her mum and her stepdad, and she even wrote on Facebook that her stepfather Andy was the best thing that ever happened to her. And Paige and her mum Pamela were like best friends. I think Pamela was relatively young when she had Paige, so the two of them had a lot in common. They both loved makeup, fashion, everything like that. They looked so similar, and they were pretty much like best friends before they were mother and daughter. Paige was a tiny girl. She was very petite. She was only 4'8", and for a 15-year-old girl, that is pretty small. She also had dyed dark brown hair as well. And Paige was a very like typical teenage girl. She was very much into makeup. She loved fashion. She was constantly on social media, always taking selfies. She was gorgeous. Paige's mum Pamela describes Paige as very respectful, very kind, very loving. She wouldn't hurt a fly. She was just such a sweet girl. So on Friday, March 18th, 2016, Paige slept over at her friend Lauren's house, and then the next morning she set off for work on the Saturday. Paige had a part-time job at a hairdresser's, about a 20-minute bus journey from where she lived, and she'd just kind of work there on Saturdays and things while she was in school, just to earn herself a little bit of money. And because she started work relatively early on a Saturday morning, she'd always stop by a shop or a deli on the way there, on the way to catching her bus, just to get herself some breakfast to eat on the bus or whatever. Anyway, she set off for work on Saturday morning on the 19th of March 2016, and it got to around midday, and Paige's boyfriend Dylan still hadn't received any texts or messages or calls or anything off Paige, which was really unusual. Like I said, Paige was always on social media, she was always on her phone, she was always really good at replying to people. She'd never like leave people hanging or not reply on purpose. And they hadn't had an argument or anything, Paige and Dylan, like they were on good terms. He was expecting a text from her that morning, like a good morning text or something, but still by like lunchtime he still hadn't heard from his girlfriend. And obviously because Paige was on her phone so much, it was very rare that she'd ever like forget her charger or leave her charger at home and let her phone like completely run out of battery. Obviously it's not impossible that she could have forgotten a charger or left her charger at home or whatever, and the chances are if she did forget her charger, if she left it at home, maybe the friend that she was staying with had a charger that she could borrow, or maybe someone at work once she got there had a charger that she could borrow. Like, people do that. People carry around the chargers in case their phone dies. So the chances of her letting her phone run completely down and then not being able to charge it back up were very low. And her boyfriend Dylan realised this was so out of character for Paige. She'd never done this before. She never hadn't texted him in the morning just to say good morning or like I'm at work safely or whatever. And so he started to get a little bit worried, so he called her work at the hairdresser's just to say like, is Paige okay? Did she turn up fine? But her boss answered the phone and said that Paige never actually made it to work that day. So immediately Dylan starts panicking and calls Paige's mother, Pamela, and just to inform her that Paige hadn't arrived at work, to see if maybe she was at home, maybe she wasn't feeling well or anything. And that was when Pamela realised she also hadn't heard from her all day. I mean, obviously Pamela knew that Paige hadn't texted her that morning, and Paige did text Pamela every morning when she got to work just to let her know that she got there safely. But as a mother, Pamela was coming up with logical excuses not to worry herself. She was thinking, well, maybe she has forgotten a charger, Maybe she's too busy having fun with a friend. Maybe she's too busy at work to text her. And obviously these kind of logical excuses mixed with the fact that Pamela was also looking after Paige's 3 younger siblings that morning. She didn't worry too much about it. She thought, well, she'll just text me when she gets back from work. I'll see her when she gets back, it's fine. And Paige was 15 years old. She always took herself to work every weekend. She was very kind of street smart. She wasn't a young child. She did this all the time, so her mother wasn't too worried. So then her boyfriend Dylan checks all of her like social media profiles and things, and she hadn't posted since the night before. Like, she hadn't even liked or commented on anything, which was very unlike Paige, like I said. And when they realised that Paige hadn't been on social media, that is when they decided that they needed to call the police, because this was so out of Paige's character to go this silent and then go missing. She'd never done that before. She'd never not been in contact with people like this before, and so everyone just kind of instinctively knew that something was wrong. So the police arrived at Paige's home. They were speaking to her mum and her stepdad. Meanwhile, like, her friends and like other family members were posting on Facebook, different social media sites, just asking if anyone had seen her, asking if anyone's with her to get her to contact them, because everyone's worried. But still, by that evening, it was tea time, it was dropping dark outside, and Paige still wasn't home. And so a police search team and a volunteer search team all went out and searched the nearby area in Clydebank. And this search even rolled into the Sunday morning as well. Still, by Sunday, there was absolutely no sign of Paige. There were no texts, she hadn't returned home, there was no social media activity, absolutely nothing. And at this point, it was really worrying, and people knew that something bad had probably happened to Paige. So from the start, the possibility of Paige running away was pretty much ruled out straight away. Obviously not completely, they're not going to completely discount that theory, because everything is possible in this kind of situation, but police weren't really looking into that as much as they were other things. Like I said, Paige was happy at home, but of course people can always act, so that doesn't really mean too much. But also the fact that she literally had not been in contact with a single person. Usually a runaway case isn't going to run away and completely cut off all contact. Don't get me wrong, that does happen, and that's why they were still looking into that theory. But at the same time, runaways, more often than not, will be texting someone at the same time, or like just keeping in contact with at least one friend. They'll often stay with a friend or something like that, especially if they're 15 years old. It'd be different if Paige was an adult, she had a full-time wage, she had money to go out and start a new life, but she didn't. And so if she did want to run away, she'd probably have to stay with someone that she knew. But she wasn't. Everyone that Paige knew was talked to. No one had seen her. Quickly, Paige's friends and family decided to start up a specific Facebook page called Help Find Paige, and this just meant that they could share her name and her face to thousands of people within hours. Honestly, social media is one of the best things for missing persons cases. Paige's mother Pamela posted pictures of every single item of clothing that Paige was wearing that morning. She posted the exact route that Paige would have been taking to work on that morning, just places that Paige frequently went, just trying to give any kind of information that might help someone to identify her if they see her about. And everyone that knew Paige, friends, family, just even like acquaintances from a school, were writing multiple messages a day. And I've got one from Pamela. Pamela wrote, "I am totally sick with worry and I just want my little girl home. She's not in trouble, she's just got to get home where she's safe and loved." Volunteers and Paige's friends and family all made posters with Paige's name and face on. They were sticking those all over Clydebank where she lived, and also all over the town where her work was, just in case she had taken the bus to work and got off there and something happened there maybe. Meanwhile, police decided to follow the route that Paige would have taken that morning. We know that she left her friend's house on the Saturday morning, we know that for a fact, and then we know that she didn't arrive at work. So police were trying to figure out where in that route she might have strayed, or even if she set off on that route at all. So they started off at Paige's friend Lauren's house, where she stayed over the night before, where she would have set off from that morning, and they began walking to Paige's normal bus stop because she lived so close to her friend that it was like the exact same route pretty much. And by her bus stop there is like a block of 5 shops in like terrace format, and so they went into each one of these shops and just asked if anyone had seen Paige on that morning. So the first shop they went into, they spoke spoke to the shopkeeper called Ashi Ahmed, and he said that he had seen Paige on that morning walking past his shop and towards the deli. And he said it was pretty much exactly at 8:15 a.m. on Saturday morning because he was making the rolls for his shop and he did that at the same time every morning. He said Paige came walking past right by the door and I waved at her and she put her hand up to wave back. She'd been in the week before and bought a roll, but on Saturday she went into Johnny's next door to get one. So Johnny actually owned a deli shop a couple of doors down from this shop called Delicious Deli. His name is John Leatham, so I'm just going to be calling him John for this video, but I think that he just called him Johnny because they were friends. And then Ashi Ahmed went on to say that I spoke to John later, and he said that she was cheery and bright just the way that she always is. So the police asked every single one of those 5 shops in the area if they had any kind of CCTV footage that they could look through, just to see like the direction that Paige went in once she left the shops, like double check what she was wearing, everything like that. But only one of those 5 shops actually had outdoor CCTV footage. They all had cameras inside the shop just in case like anything happened in the shop, but there was only one, Ashi Ahmed's shop, that had CCTV on the outside. And the CCTV in Ashi Ahmed's shop runs on a 12-day loop, so after 12 days it'll start again and it'll be a new tape. So they actually just took 3 hours from the Saturday morning because she was just going to be in and out of the shop in 10 minutes. They didn't need any more than 3 hours just so that they could check like what she was wearing, like I said, which direction she went in. So police took this kind of 3-hour long CCTV clip back to the police station. They were about to look at it, but before they got a chance to, they received some bad news. On Monday, March 21st, 2016, just 48 hours after Paige left her friend's house and went missing, police received a call from a local dog walker who claimed to have seen human legs underneath a bush. So police went down, they cordoned off the whole area and they identified this body as a full female body, and it was found just half a mile away from where Paige was last seen in those shops. So the body was taken for identification and post-mortem and everything. Meanwhile, Paige's family were informed that a body had been found.
The police said it was maybe a 20-year-old girl, and I was like, can it be Paige because she's tiny, she doesn't look 20, you couldn't mistake her for a 20-year-old, but I knew on the Saturday night that something had happened to her because she hadn't contacted me. But then when you hear on the Monday that body's been found, like, and it's like 5 minutes over the back for us, I was like, it's got to be her.
Obviously, police couldn't say like explicitly that they'd found Paige's body. All they could say is that they'd found a female body and that Paige's family had to come down the following day to identify her. But at that time, there were only 3 girls missing in that area, one of which was blonde and 2 of which were brunette, and one of those was obviously Paige.
I says, it's not the blonde girl because you wouldn't be at my door. I said, so if the other person shows up with the brown hair, then it's Paige. But they try and get you to think positive and things, but as a parent, it's your worst nightmare, so you always go through everything. And I think it was about 10:30 that night, the other wee girl showed up, and I was like, I know, it's definitely her, but...
Gut feeling?
As I say, I knew on the Saturday night, I kept saying to everybody, something's up there, something's happened, you're going to need to prepare yourself, and they're like, no, she'll show up, but... just totally out of character, totally.
And like Pamela said, the other brunette girl showed up on the Monday night, and so she just knew that the body had to be Paige. So the following morning on the Tuesday, Pamela and other family members went to identify Paige Doherty, and the post-mortem revealed her cause of death. Paige's official cause of death was blood loss from stab wounds, and the number of stab wounds varies depending on which kind of news outlet you're looking at. Obviously, I do most of this research from different news articles and things, and I can't tell you how many different numbers I read on different websites, so I'm really sorry about that, but this one seemed to be the most common. So the number that was on most websites was 61 stab wounds and 150 total injuries.
The papers will say she was stabbed like 126 times or something like that, but she was stabbed a lot more, and she was stabbed with more than just a knife. There was a couple of weapons.
However, Paige's mum Pamela believes there was way more than just 150 injuries on Paige. She believes it to be upwards of almost like 500, I think she said. She thinks that like the media and whoever's like controlling this case in the public eye is really trying to make it seem like there was a lot less that happened to Paige.
She had a hole like the size of your fist and her neck, like half her neck was gone. Like, that's no an accident. You don't accidentally stab somebody in the region of 500 times. So they said it was slashes and defence wounds, but it was a lot worse than that.
Almost all of Paige's injuries were to her body and the left-hand side of her neck and her head, so much so that, like Pamela said, almost half of her neck had gone. There was also 3 separate weapons used, believed to have been scissors, a knife and a screwdriver. So this was no like spur-of-the-moment attack, just grabbing a weapon from the side. This person, whoever had done this, had gone and looked for further weapons to use on Paige. Whoever did this to Paige was looking to prolong it as long as they could. They were looking for different ways to keep it exciting or whatever, and inflict a total of what Pamela believes to have been almost 500 injuries on her daughter Paige. But the media have been pretty shady about what kind of facts and details and evidence that they release to the public throughout this case. You'll see that more as we get on to like who the suspects are and things like that. You'll see that more. But Pamela believes that they have held a lot back. Pamela believes, obviously, that they reported a lesser number of injuries than what Paige actually had, but the media also never reported that there were more than one weapon used. Police believe it to be at least 3, but none of the news articles ever really talked about that. The injuries she had were obviously the major stab wounds on her head and on her neck on the left-hand side, but also the kind of more minor injuries were like scratches and cuts and grazes, bruises from where she tried to defend herself against her attacker. The day after Paige's body was found, some photos began circulating on social media of a young boy holding a bloody knife, claiming that he and his friend murdered Paige. One of the boy's friends reported them to police, saying that he'd been on FaceTime with his friend, the one claiming to be the murderer, when he'd shown him the knife that he'd supposedly used on Paige, and it still had a red substance on it. However, this was like 4 days after Paige would have died, and so for this knife to still have a red substance on it. This boy had also been phoning different girls, claiming that he and his friend killed Paige, obviously, just giving them like grim details, saying that they went home and they burned their clothes after. Just really strange things. Police obviously looked into this boy and his friend, but as you can probably guess, it was all for attention. They didn't know Paige, they didn't do it. He wasn't the murderer. I don't know if he faced any kind of punishment for putting all of that on social media and stuff. He definitely should have, because I don't know, imagine how scarring that must have been to his friend to go on FaceTime and see that and hear him saying all these things, and to those girls that he gave all the details of it to. Like, meanwhile, police were still questioning all the different shop owners on that street while they were waiting for this CCTV footage to, 1, arrive at the police station, and 2, like, format into their system. They were just kind of questioning everyone on that street. So after speaking with Ashi Ahmed from the first shop, and he said that Paige went into John Leatham's shop, Delicious Deli, they decided to go and speak to John, because obviously he saw and spoke to Paige that morning. So police went in and they asked him if he'd seen Paige, if he'd spoken to her, and he said that he hadn't. He said that he didn't recognise Paige, didn't know who she was. He had so many people coming in and out of his shop every day that there's no way he could possibly, like, keep track of each person's face. But I mean, Paige went in multiple times a week, every week. So, I mean, I understand where he's coming from, so many people coming in and out, but those people are all the same people. It's a very, very small town where they live, and you're going to get to know people's faces and names and things. And then after a few hours of questioning, John suddenly realised that yes, he had seen Paige that morning. She'd come in, she'd bought a roll for breakfast, and then she left to go and get her bus. He said she was acting normal, she didn't seem stressed or anything, she just seemed like she did every other time that she came into the shop. Like, nothing was amiss. And that was the last sighting of Paige. As soon as she left that shop, like John said, no one's seen her since then. So something must have happened to her from there on the way to work. And obviously there's no way of actually knowing if she did get on that bus either, because buses don't take people's names as they're getting on. Like, you just get on and go to your destination. So there's no way of knowing if she was killed in Clydebank, where she lived, or if she did actually get to her work town. Police decided that she probably never actually got her bus that morning because, like I said, her body was found half a mile away from where she was last seen at those shops. And so if she did get on the bus and go 20 minutes away to another town, why would the killer then drive her body all the way back to where she lived? So it just makes more sense that maybe she never got the bus that day. Maybe she was attacked between the deli and the bus stop and she was killed, and then the person just dumped her body pretty close to where they killed her. So anyway, the CCTV footage was finally processed and police were able to watch it, and they did see Paige enter the Delicious Deli at 8:21 a.m. on the day that she went missing, on March 19th. So police carried on watching. They were waiting for her to come out of this shop so that they could see like which direction she went in to see if she did intend on going and getting the bus. But Paige never left the deli. Obviously, like I said, police took a 3-hour window of footage from around 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. that morning. And if she entered at 8:20 a.m., they just expected her to be out within like 10 minutes because she was only buying a roll. So police went back to Ashi Ahmed's shop and asked for the whole 12-day loop of footage just to see like anything, to see any strange behaviour around that area, to see if Paige ever came out. Maybe she was just having a really long conversation, who knows? They just needed more footage. And police also went to Delicious Deli, the shop that John Leatham owned, and they took him in for police questioning because he had obviously lied about how long Paige was in that shop, and that was pretty suspicious. They also asked John Leatham for any kind of CCTV that he might have from inside the shop, because obviously that was where Paige was, and they could see if she was just having a conversation with him or what happened. And John willingly gave over this CCTV to the police. But when police got this CCTV footage and watched it back, it seemed that a lot of the footage from the morning of Paige's disappearance was missing. So much so that the footage from inside the deli never shows Paige at all. And we know she went in from the CCTV outside. It shows her walking into that shop. So why is she not on any of the CCTV? I don't know if John Leatham gave any kind of excuse or reasoning as to why half of the footage was missing from that day. I couldn't find that in any news articles, any police reports, anything. So, I mean, I'm sorry about that, but it's suspicious either way. Anyway, police continued to look at that 12-day loop of CCTV footage from the outside of the shops, and still, they never saw Paige leave on that day at all. Police continued watching this CCTV for hours and hours and hours. They had so many different police looking at different sections of it at once. They never saw Paige leave. And so police, fearing the worst, fearing that maybe that was where Paige was killed, they sent a forensic team to the deli to cordon it all off. But what the police did find when looking at this CCTV footage was some really weird behaviour from the shop owner, John Leatham. Around 10 a.m, so almost 2 hours after Paige had entered the shop, the CCTV footage shows John Leatham running out of his own deli shop and into another shop, buying some things and then running back into his own deli. And at this point, from different witness testimonies, the shutters on the Delicious Deli shop had actually been closed, as if the shop had just been closed for a bit. So John closed his own deli shop, his own business, his own form of income, for no apparent reason. I don't think he ever gave a reason to police. And then he ran to another shop and then bought some things and ran back. Why was he in such a rush when the shop is closed anyway? And then at 10:03 a.m, he comes out of his deli shop, walks over to his car, opens the boot of his car, and he looks as if he's clearing a space in his boot. The boot of your car is the same as the trunk of your car if you're international or whatever. People always get really confused when I say the boot of the car. So it's just that back storage of the car. And then in unreleased police footage, so this has not been put out in the media or anything, so I don't have anything to show you for this bit, but I can describe it. Only Paige's family have seen this, and obviously police, but it's not a public piece of evidence. John then walks out of his deli with this big bin bag in his hands, as if he's just taking out the rubbish. He walks over to his car, puts this bin bag in the back of his car, almost hits a child while he's carrying this big heavy bin bag to his car, and just puts it in his boot like he's taking out the rubbish. And then at 11:59 a.m, John gets into his car, and drives away with this bin bag in the boot of his car. And this was all just red flag after red flag for police. What was in that bin bag? Why was he taking it to his car? Why did he close his shop for a bit? Why was he running between shops? It was all just very, very suspicious behaviour. But the biggest red flag obviously was that big bin bag, because yes, it could easily be rubbish, but why would John be taking out his own rubbish when we have like bin men who come and collect your rubbish and take it away for you so that you don't have to do that? And when you're running a deli shop by yourself, you're not going to take like half an hour out of your day, close your shop, close your business, your only form of income, to just take some rubbish away when other people could be doing that for you while you're running your business and earning money for your family. Just think of how much business he lost in that time that he was taking out that rubbish. So why couldn't he just leave it to the bin men and be back at his work? What was in that bin bag that meant he had to take it and not someone else? At this point, on Thursday 24th of March, John Leatham was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Paige Doherty, because it was more than just suspicion at this point. They had almost evidence. John was 31, he was a father of 2, one of which was a baby to his current wife Katia, and one of which was a 9-year-old girl called Paige from a previous relationship. Police also began a search of John and Katia's home just for any more evidence, maybe a murder weapon, maybe some form of blood, bin bags, I don't know, anything. And John Leatham, before Paige's body was found, so while she was just missing, he actually featured on local news as, you know, like one of those shocked member of the community type things where they just kind of interview someone, get them to say how unlike that town it is for someone to go missing. And he was that. He was saying like, I've got a little girl too, I'd hate for anything like this to happen to my little girl, can't imagine if my little girl went missing, hope they find Paige safe. Like, it was very strange. He also supported Paige's family in more ways than one. He went up and shook Paige's grandfather's hand, said like, I hope you find her. He offered for Paige's mum Pamela to come round to his house and talk about Paige, because obviously he was the last one to have seen her, so he just asked if she wanted to come round and they could talk about it. I don't know what there is to talk about, and neither did she.
I don't even know where he stays. Why would I want to go to his house? And I said to my husband no long ago, I says, maybe he was going to, maybe so I was kind of realising that he's done something, he was going to
do the same to you.
That if I had, because normally I would have went, but I was like, I've got no reason to go, but if I'd have went round, then you just don't know.
So the details of John Leatham's like police questioning are pretty private. Like, there's no news articles on it. Like, I found it really hard to find information on the police questioning side of this. I believe at first he was adamant with his story. He stuck to the story that she came in, she bought a roll and she left, even though CCTV footage could prove him completely wrong. But if you remember, John was caught on CCTV running out of his deli and into another shop. He bought some things and then he ran back to his own shop. And so the owner of this other shop was questioned to see like what John bought, like if he seemed stressed or in a rush or whatever. And the shopkeeper said he bought bin bags, bleach and antibacterial wipes. 2 days after his arrest, John Leatham appeared at a private court hearing and he made no plea. So he didn't say guilty, he didn't say not guilty, he just... I don't actually know, I don't really understand that, but he didn't say either. Then finally, on September 5th, 2016, 6 months after Paige's murder, John Leatham appeared in court and pled guilty to the murder of Paige Doherty. Okay, so his reasoning for killing Paige. He said that Paige came in that morning, she asked for a roll, he was making her a sandwich, and they were just kind of having a normal chat as he was doing it. Everything was normal, Paige was the only person in the shop, but she'd been in so many times, like everything was just the same as it had been every single time she'd come in and bought a roll before. And John said the topic of conversation quickly turned to like her job and how she wanted a different job. She wanted a job at John's deli. So John said, yeah, okay, come into the back, you can fill out a little application form and then like I'll call you back for an interview or whatever. And as Paige was filling out this application form in the back of the deli, she wrote down her age on the sheet, which was 15, and then John saw that and said, oh, I'm sorry, you're 15, I can't give you a job here. And so John claims at this point Paige gets angry with him and threatens that if he doesn't give her this job, she's going to go to authority and say that John tried to touch her. And John actually has a twin brother who is on the sex offenders register. He raped a woman and he's been on the sex offenders register ever since, and it's ruined his life, as it should. He's found it really hard to get jobs. He's been fired from jobs when they've found out. Like, it's made his life hell. And so John says that when Paige supposedly said this to him, he just thought about his brother. He thought about how hard his brother's life had been since he was put on the register. And so he thought, there is no way that I can let this girl go and tell someone that I've tried to touch her. And so he grabbed a knife from the side and started stabbing her, because somehow being a murderer is better than being a sex offender. It honestly just blows my mind that he thought that that was an acceptable reaction to murder someone who just threatened that. Like, obviously, if Paige did threaten that, that's not good, but it doesn't provoke murder. But I'll get on to in a second why I think that's not true, why I don't think Paige said that, and why no one thinks Paige said that. Obviously, Paige's mum Pamela does not believe John's story whatsoever. Not many people do, honestly.
He obviously gave an excuse that Paige blackmailed him and a lot of rubbish. She didn't have that. Everybody that knew Paige knew she had a job anyway, but like she just didn't have any malice in her at all. She wouldn't do it. But I think that he's tried something with her. Paige, like, she's got morals. She would have been disgusted.
Like Pamela said, Paige had a job at the hairdressers that she loved. She loved her job. She loved her co-workers. That's what she wanted to do when she was older. She loved beauty. She loved makeup. She wanted to go into that kind of career avenue. So why would she want to give up her job at the hairdressers to have a job at a sandwich shop? Not that a job at a sandwich shop is bad, but the hairdressing job was just way more suited to Paige. It was what she loved to do. It was more suited to her hobbies. Why would she give that up for a completely different job just making food when that's not what she wants to do as a career? And obviously Paige's family say that that was completely out of her character to even threaten anyone. Obviously, if you didn't know Paige, that's not going to be a very good argument for you, because like, it's just her family's word. You're just taking her family's word for what she was like. But I think the fact that she already had a job pretty much proves that his story is just a load of rubbish. No one truly knows why John Leatham killed Paige that day, like what happened in the shop to make him want to do that. Obviously, it's completely up to you what you believe, whether you believe John's story or whether you kind of believe Pamela's theory, Paige's mum's theory. It's also believed, but not confirmed, that after he killed Paige on the Saturday, he took her body back to his own house, hid her body in the shed in his garden, and just spent the weekend with his wife and his 2 kids, one of which was a baby, just in the house while there was a dead body out in the garden. And then on Monday morning he took Paige's body and dumped it where she was then found. So now that John had pled guilty to the murder of Paige Doherty, another trial was set for October where John would be sentenced. But in the time before his sentencing, so between September and October, some rumours began to circulate around the community that maybe there was more to this murder than we once thought. I don't know where these rumours stemmed from, I don't know where they started, I don't know if there's any evidence to back it up, but there was a rumour that maybe John Leatham and Paige Doherty were having an affair. And there was even a rumour that Paige was pregnant with John's baby at 15 years old. He was 31. So that rumour that Paige was pregnant can be completely discounted because she had an autopsy. They would have found if she was pregnant during that autopsy, and she just wasn't. So that's definitely a rumour. Whereas for the relationship between John and Paige, Paige's kind of phone records, social media records, everything was searched, and there was no contact ever made between John and Paige over the phone at all.
But there was no emails, no texts.
No emails, no texts.
There was nothing to confirm that there'd been any communication.
The police had to investigate it because they look for reason, really. And they had to kind of look through emails, any social media, any irregularity round about the shop and stuff. And she was always just in and out. She got a roll every morning and out and went to work. So there was no, it was as if she hung about there trying to get a hold of him, and they said there was nothing to suggest otherwise.
And the papers never printed that?
No.
Obviously, we can't be 100% sure that there was absolutely nothing between them, but I mean, there's so much evidence that says that there wasn't. No phone records, no kind of prolonged conversations in the deli. So unless they were having an affair by just talking to each other in the deli, I don't know where the logic is in that argument. But I'm pretty confident in saying that there was probably nothing between them. But as always, you guys come to your own conclusions. Just look at the evidence and you can decide for yourself what you think. Then on October 12th, 2016, John Leatham was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 27 years. The murder weapons used on Paige have never been found. John's never told police where he disposed of them or what he used. Police are just guessing based on the injuries made that they were scissors, knife and screwdriver, but still no one knows. And then just 2 months later, in December of 2016, John Leatham appealed for his sentence to be reduced on the grounds that it was excessive. And unbelievably, the court agreed that his sentence was excessive and it was reduced to life in prison with a minimum of 23 years. So he had 4 years taken off of his sentence. On a lighter note, in May of 2017, Paige's mother Pamela and her husband Andy Munro welcomed a baby girl who they actually named after her older sister Paige. She's called Penny Margaret Paige. And Paige's mother Pamela has since vowed to complete Paige's bucket list for her. So all of these things that Paige dreamed of doing that she never got a chance to do. This list included visiting New York, which they've actually already done. They did in the back end of 2017, I think. It also included visiting Barbados, learning to drive, meeting Amy Childs from The Only Way is Essex, and getting a tattoo. Paige's family still buy Paige birthday presents and Christmas presents every year, and then they donate all of those presents that would have gone to Paige to different charities. If you've ever heard of Pout for Paige, that came from this case. It was a huge part of this case, and it actually stemmed from the day that Leatham pled guilty to her murder. It's basically a campaign just to kind of keep Paige's memory alive, keep people talking about her, raise awareness of this case, and it's done by people taking pictures of themselves pouting, just like Paige used to do in a lot of her photos, and posting them with the caption Pout for Paige. So many people have got involved in this campaign. Celebrities, politicians, just so many people have done a Pout for Paige picture. Paige's family have also set up a charity called Paige's Promise. And part of this charity, they give self-defense classes to young people. They also offer like counselling services for anyone that's lost someone that they love in a very sudden way. So it doesn't have to be murder, just any kind of unexpected death. Paige's family have done so much in her memory, and so I thought that this video was really important to cover. So if you do want to get involved in Paige's Promise, I'll link the Facebook page down below. I don't think they have a proper website, I think it's just a Facebook page. I'll try and figure out like if you can donate or anything like that, or if it is just like a Facebook page where you can raise awareness. But yeah, that completes this case. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a big thumbs up on the video because that really helps me out. And subscribe down below if you do want to see some more content like this, because I do have a week of true crime videos coming very soon. I don't want to give you any exact dates just yet, just in case it needs pushing back a little bit. I don't know, I hope not. I've got some dates in mind, but I don't want to tell you just in case you like get your hopes up and then for some reason I can't do it on those dates. But just know it's coming very soon. I'm doing all my research for it. It's a lot of work, but I'm so excited for you all to see it and to spend so much time with you in that week. Oh my god. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.